Yes, it has been
Okay.
started.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Welcome.
So I am calling this meeting of the Public Safety Communications Task Force to order. It's 11:15 on May 22nd, 2024, and I'm Barbara Neal. As a reminder, the meeting is being recorded. The recording will be posted on the task force webpage following the meeting. Let's start with a roll call. If you could verbally acknowledge your presence when I call your name. Jen Morrison.
I'm here.
Michael Wright.
I am here.
Mike Dunges.
Here.
Ron Kumitz.
I am here.
And Jim Mack.
Here.
Okay, and we did get a note from Paul White that he's running late this morning. Also joining us today is, and filling in for Kelly, is Sonny Johnson from the Enhanced 911 Board as our administrative support. Our project management team, or a portion thereof, Rick Burke, is here from Televate. And Rance Duffy is here from Mission Critical Partners. Let's see, do we have members of the public? I have someone listed as unknown user. Stephen, is that you? Oops.
They just departed.
They just departed. Okay, fair enough. So before we move on to approval of the agenda, I just want to check in on one thing. Jen has a hard stop at noon. If we go beyond that, can the remaining task force members stay on the call past noon so that we have a quorum?
I cannot. I'm sorry, Barbara. I do have
Okay.
a conflict that I'm going to have to take care of. Apologize.
At noon. Okay. So that would leave Jim, me, Michael, and Ron, which is still a quorum. Jim, can you stay on?
Yep.
And Michael? Okay, and Ron, how about you after? Okay, excellent. Unless you disagree with that approach, Jen, we'll just continue on if we go past noon. Okay, excellent. All right, I do see that Senator Renner has joined us. We were just going through public introductions. Senator, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Senator from Chittenden North.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to approval of the agenda. The agenda was distributed to task force members by email and is also available on our webpage. Do task force members have any changes to the agenda today? Okay, seeing none, we'll consider the agenda approved and move on to approval of the minutes. So these are the minutes from the May 8th regular meeting, number 25. Any changes needed to these minutes? All right, we'll need a motion then to approve the minutes from May 8th.
Motion to approve the minutes from May 8th.
Second.
Mike,
A second.
I'll let you sort that out, Sonny, on who got in there first. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes from May 8th, raise your hand or signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All task force hands are up with the exception of Mike Dunges. Oh, there it is. Okay, there's Mike Dunges.
I
So
said
the
aye.
minutes, okay, sorry, I missed that. The minutes are approved. So on to public comment. I see we have had a unknown user join us again. Stephen, is that you?
It is.
Okay, all right. So public comments. Let's start first with Senator Renner. Do you have anything you'd like to share today?
Not today. I'm just here to listen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Stephen, any public comments?
Yeah, I do. I have been reviewing the proposed plan for the 9 million, which is clearly and explicitly the jurisdiction for this task force to be advising and overseeing how that 9 million is going to support the transition to statewide regional emergency communications. And instead, what I see is the department replacing, upgrading their statewide LMR system, replacing their consoles, replacing their microwave dishes, none of which is part of a plan to support transition to regional dispatch. So unless and until we have an architecture that says that the regional dispatch operations are going to rely on the state's LMR and microwave infrastructure, that's a misappropriation of the funds and congressional intent. So I have brought this up repeatedly and asked the task force to discuss it, and crickets. I've asked for documents because I see that Televate, who I advised against relying on them to try to create cover for using this to fluff the department's nest. Their ethics have never been duly, due diligence has not been reviewed of what their conduct in both the FirstNet and the CV, Central Vermont Public Safety Authority's deliverables. And so now they're supposedly going to review compliance with the congressional intent on behalf of the task force, which is ill-advised at best. But doing so is noticed in the minutes or in the report. And I just got a response from Jen that, oh, we didn't write anything down. We just had a phone call or a meeting. There's no records. So this task force is not doing its job to oversee whether or not that $9 million is going to be spent to support the transition to regional statewide emergency communications. And we do have a 1-year extension, so it's time to reevaluate whether or not other considerations or other possibilities for how that money gets spent in a way that would clearly and support a transition to statewide regional emergency communications. And otherwise, the two efforts are conflicting with each other because Mission Critical has not had time to put a plan together, nor is there even an architecture of who's going to rely on which technology owned by whom in order to build a resilient statewide system. So I've heard from others complain that this thing is being railroaded. I've heard Paul respond to my quick comments last week or 2 weeks ago saying that this task force wants to be led around by the two co-chairs, both of which have a conflict of interest. I will reiterate that. Barb Neal and the 911 board has a conflict of interest in allegedly deciding to without discussion, withhold the access to the cellular antenna database necessary for Mission Critical to complete its work. And Jen has a conflict of interest in spending the $9 million on her own systems for the department without an architecture that demonstrates compliance with the congressional intent. So this task force cannot be led by those two co-chairs, conflicted co-chairs, in doing due diligence on whether or not this $9 million is going to be spent according to a plan which hasn't been written yet. So I'm annoyed that nobody sees fit to put this on the agenda and have open public discussion about it. Ask you to step up and do what you were appointed to do, even if it ruffles some feathers of your co-chairs. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. To address one of your comments, the Televate review of the congressionally directed spending plan on behalf of the task force will be on the agenda for the next meeting scheduled June 5th. So just thought that would be helpful information for you to have. And we will move, I'm sorry, Kim Cheney joined us. Kim, do you have any comments today?
No, I don't. Sorry, I was a little late getting on. Thanks for asking me.
Okay. All right then. Moving on then to project updates. Mike.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
two
Mike.
things. No, it's okay.
Yep.
Two things. One, Ron did have his hand up as well, so I think he had a comment, and then I'm happy to comment after Ron. So.
Ron, do you have a comment or is your hand still up from the minutes vote?
My hand was still up from the other vote.
Okay. Fair
Um,
enough.
but-
Mike?
Barbara, I just wanted to follow up with your comment. I believe that even looking at, I know we're going to discuss it at next meeting and I want to take a lot of time, but looking at, so far the draft plans for the $9 million spend, the systems that are prescribed or maybe suggested in that plan so far, a majority of those systems could, if we think about it for our plan, be utilized in regional dispatch. And that's why I feel a little bit more, I don't feel concerned at this stage. The fact that there is an extension of time gives us the opportunity to discuss how we're going to implement that, and the fact that no purchase orders have been cut or sent out or made yet on any of that, from my knowledge at least, says to me that we are doing our due diligence in the proper process, and having that discussion next meeting will certainly be helpful in that. So I'm not, again, for me, the timeline, I know that things don't move quickly in government and that we are working at the pace in which we are able to. And I do believe that we have the best intent to make sure that that 9 million is in line as DPS has to spend that based on the CDS guidelines, that we will be spending that appropriately with our guidance. So that's all I want to say.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. All right. Let's move on then to the next agenda item, which is project updates. And Rick Dom is not with us today, so I'll hand it off to Rick.
Thank you, Barb. Good morning, everyone. We've had a very productive couple of weeks, and happy to share some of the status that's been accomplished over these past couple of weeks. Some of it, certainly one of the key items has been the review of the COPS grant. And I think I'll start with that one. So we were tasked by, we were provided guidance by the task force to review the COPS grant, both the initial and the follow-up grant that was submitted for the schedule extension, and we reviewed the report also on the grant that was developed by Dan Hawkins and his company. So we, in support of that, we did some extensive background. We interviewed a number of people. We did a variety of background research on some of the content from the Dan Hawkins report and from the grant, and we spoke to the developers of the grant, and we spoke to representatives from the 911 board. And so, we got a good background on it. Obviously, we compared that analysis that we did to the task force objectives. And so, the guidance from the task force was to look at each of the tasks. So we reviewed all of the tasks. I think there's 13 tasks. Some of them have 9A and 9B, but we divided them into exclusive elements: land mobile radio, dispatch, and a variety of other elements. So we did an extensive review on that, and the background we were given from the task force was to look at each of the tasks based on whether they were foundational. In other words, would they be beneficial to any or all of the potential recommendations from that mission critical would develop. So that was the first objective. The second objective is, which of these tasks might be restrictive. In other words, would they restrict the MCP planning effort or some of the recommendations for a statewide system? And so, we provided our first perspective on it. So we provided our findings on that, and we then are in the process of developing some recommendations. So we will have at least one more meeting, and then we'll be back and present to the task force in 2 weeks. We'll present our findings and recommendations based on that. So that was an important effort, and we're happy with the background and the support from all of the participants. That was I think a very important accomplishment, and it certainly addresses some of the comments that were just brought up from during public opinion and mentioned by members of the task force. So I think that was, happy to start with that because that's on everyone's mind. How do these two funding sources and objectives align with one another, and how do they support the overall objective? And we'll go into that and we'll present those findings during the next task force. Also, over these past couple of weeks, very important is that we, finalize the questionnaire to guide the PSAP and dispatch center surveys. And that has been released for task force participation in multiple back and forth meetings to refine and expand on the questionnaires, and to be sure, from two perspectives. One, that we didn't put too much burden on the reviewers, on those who were going to survey and interview, and give them guidance on what information is needed and why we need it and how we're going to use it, and also just to make it a more efficient process. So the survey has been the draft survey has been published, and I think it may be part of a conversation we'll have today. But that was multiple meetings, a lot of hours, a lot of effort on all teams' part, MCP, members of the task force that participated, and Televate. So I'm happy with that, with the outcome of that. And I think we'll get a chance to talk about it in a little bit more detail during today's meeting. We, among the other things we did is that we did clear and updated as an action item the development of the initial task stakeholder list. So that developing of that list has been finalized. So we have those who are going to contact and continue to communicate with during the course of this program. So that was an important achievement. And MCP and Televate continue to meet, discussing, information exchanges and schedules. So now, one of the key efforts was to produce the questionnaire and get final approval from the task force on it. And then that really kicks off the whole process to inform the stakeholders of the PSAPs and the dispatch centers that what we're going to need for them and what their participation is and what benefits it'll produce to the overall program. And we need to, that schedule is really driven, a lot of it driven by getting this questionnaire done. And now, the MCP is working on the schedule of the whole outreach process from that perspective. So that will be done. Our goal is to finish that over the, prior to our next meeting. So we'll have a full schedule, and get out initial word to the PSAPs and 911 centered contacts that will be engaging them. And, that should really, really important, major endeavor to get that kick started. So, we're also working on we released the next stakeholder, the stakeholder update, and we're working on the next version as well. MCP also was able to have a meeting with the Vermont Crime Information Center to discuss obtaining information for data collection process. So all of the elements required to advance the program are in full swing. And with that said, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Great, thanks, Rick. Do task force members have any questions for Rick? All righty, hearing none. I appreciate that update. Let's move on to, as Rick mentioned a couple times here, the dispatch survey status. Rance, I'll hand it over to you to kind of set it up as to where we stand, the work that was done based on the input from last time. And then we'll see what task force members have to say. And when we see what task force members have to say, I want to start first with Jen and Mike because they have that hard stop. So I want to make sure we have any input from them right from the get-go. And then we'll move on to going like section by section with everyone. So Rance, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Barbara. And hello, all task force members. As Rick mentioned, and we kind of hit it several times, the questionnaire has been, we have been working on it, and we've been working on it over and over since then. Want to give you a quick review. You guys, as the full task force, saw it on April 24th. That's when we did our first official review. Since that time up until today, we've had 2 other review meetings, which included Televate, of course, MCP team, and the co-chair, so we could continue to do refinement on the questions themselves and make sure we got the right information, or asking the right information and getting everything that we possibly could. On top of that, we also did a quality assurance internal review with the company. Just mainly that was just wording and punctuation and making sure questions sounded right. You know, after you look at over 100 questions several times, and myself looking at it several times, because I'm the one kind of spearheading the whole questionnaire, I can only look at it so many times and it seems to say the same or it's good. So I need other people to look at it as well. So we have done that several times at this point, looking over the questionnaire to make sure we got it to where you are seeing it today, which I believe you're looking at version 7. So you can see how many times we've went through a draft and made some adjustments to it. So we're ready to kind of take a look at it, or Barbara, I'm going to kick it back to you to see how we want to go forward from here.
Okay.
Barb, can you have somebody send out that questionnaire to the people who haven't gotten it yet?
Yeah, Sonny, do you have that?
Yes, I think Callie forwarded me a copy. I can send it out. Who needs it, Stephen?
I would think all of our guests today. Yep, Senator, we see
Okay.
you. All of our guests today.
Yes.
Before it gets sent out, let's make sure it's marked a draft. I do not want a survey getting out in the field and people being confused when they get another version of it. So please do not send anything out that is not marked a draft.
Okay, I'm not sure
I
if the
will look at
PDF
it.
is marked a draft or not, so
I'll check.
we'll check that. I do intend to display it on the screen, so in a moment. But before we do that, in the event that we run out of time, Jen, do you have any comments on any section of the survey that you want to share now?
No, thank you for asking.
None? Okay. Mike Dunges, how about you? Any comments on any part of the survey that you want to share now?
No, not at the moment. Maybe during discussion, and I understand I might have to dip out early, but I appreciate you asking, Barbara. Thank you.
Okay, great then. So let me share my screen. I think that will be useful. Let's see if it will.
Not to me, it won't.
Okay. All right, you should be, or those who can, should be able to see the questionnaire now. So what becomes difficult here is I can't see you very well. So just speak up if you have a comment on any of the sections. Let's start with the introduction, which is page 1 to about halfway through page 2. Are there any comments from task force members on this section? Okay. Hearing none, let's move to contact information and demographics. So these are questions 1 through 12. Comments or feedback on this section? All righty. Caller, if I'm going too fast.
I had a question, Barbara, just on and I know it's really, really simple, but
okay.
Is there a way to, I'm assuming that these contacts not only are filling this out, but we're going to be reaching back out to them at a future time. Is there a way to ensure that the key stakeholder, or who the key stakeholder is, or is that already done in the preliminary part of the reach out?
I can answer that. And I know we're not collecting it, but I know working with Televate, we already have a master list of contacts to the agencies within the state that we're going to send this to. And then of course, what you kind of see with the questions, we're reinforcing the contact up there at the top. And then we're also going to have some additional information by learning which agencies they dispatch for.
All right. Thanks, Rance. I appreciate that.
Sure.
If I could also add to that, at various points throughout the survey, there are requests for contacts. Who's your radio contact? Who is the,
Great.
who is who is responsible for maintaining a particular application? So the gathering of additional contacts through the survey is ongoing.
That's fantastic. Just so you're aware, my concern comes from the fact when things like this go out, if 3 people get it, everybody assumes everybody else is answering it, and we may not get the results. So that's what I'm looking for. That sounds perfect, Rick and Rance. Thank you.
Okay.
Ron has his hand up.
I see that. Yep, thank you. Ron, go ahead.
So my comment is with regard to the, which fire and EMS agencies are dispatched question. I think that question needs to be rephrased so that it gathers the information on which, like there are EMS agencies out there that serve, a dozen towns. There are towns that don't have their own fire department and they rely on a neighboring department. So I think while we're collecting this information, we should correlate that because like when the Division of Fire Safety collected information on the fire departments, they are still not clear on, who it is that's putting out fires in some towns and things like that. So if we get both the information on the actual agencies that are being dispatched and for which communities those agencies are serving, I think that would be helpful to do that right up front before we have to gaps in the information later.
Oh, I think I understand what you're saying. So for each fire rescue or EMS, we would want an associated town.
And the towns that they serve, or if the dispatch agency knows whose calls they're taking, they could just say, well, here are the towns we serve, and these are the agencies that we send to those fire and rescue calls. It doesn't really matter which way you do it, as long as you get both bits of information.
Rance, does that make sense to you?
It was. I'm glad. Thank you for restating that, Barbara. It helped me clarify. I made some notes. And by the way, everybody, I'm going to be making some notes as you're talking through if we have to make any edits afterwards.
But let me give you an example. The town of Sudbury does not have a fire department. They rely on the town of Whiting's fire department as their fire department. But if you went looking for that information, it would be kind of hard to figure it out without calling the town of Sudbury and actually asking them.
Understood. I'm clear on that. Thank you.
Okay. And Sonny, I see. Oh, sorry, Ron. Were you all set?
I'm good to go.
All righty. Thank you. Sonny, I see your hand is up.
Yes, so I do have a copy of the questionnaire from Callie. The document is named draft, but the document itself does not have a watermark or anything that says draft. I have gone into it and it is not giving me an option to add a watermark. I can add a stamp that says draft. It'll take me a little while if you want it to be on every single page because it's 44 pages long, but I can do that and get it sent out while this discussion is ongoing.
Jen, what's your preference?
Whatever is the most expeditious way to get Stephen to be able to see what we're talking about, but understanding that it's going to create confusion in the field if multiple drafts of this are floating around. So I think that a reasonable effort to at least mark the first and last page as draft or something and then send it out, but 44 pages would take you a while.
Okay,
Yeah.
no problem.
Let me ask one. Okay, that's fine. Let's proceed that way. All right. Any
I have
other? Go ahead, Jim.
Part of to what Ron says, some of that information is available, or I should say that information is available on who dispatches for what areas and what fire departments, EMS agencies cover what areas. That 911 data has that. When I take that 911 call, I know exactly who I'm transferring the call to. for fire EMS.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm wondering if we request the information from the respondents, if we might see if there's any discrepancies in
Difference.
there. There ought not be, but
It's always
I'm
possible.
not sure. Yeah, I think it's useful to collect it direct from the people doing the work as well. And we can follow up on any discrepancies afterwards. Anything else from task force members on this section 1 through question 12? Okay, moving on then to technology, which is questions 13 to 30. I had no comments here. Task force members? I'm not going to scroll through each question. I'm hoping you all had an opportunity to review in advance. So I'm not going to read through each question. I guess I am scrolling through them.
Barb, is there a question there about dispatch centers that are currently in the process of upgrading or changing consoles? I know our dispatch centers in a bunch of upgrade changes with CAD systems and upgrades to mountaintops, that type of stuff. So I didn't know if I saw that or if we should add that.
There is.
Yeah, that stuff's in there.
There is
Yeah,
a question, yes.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Question 29 is do you have a hardware upgrade or major technology change planned?
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on this section through question 30? You can always jump back if something comes up. Well, I'll move on to wireless communications, which is questions 31 to 58. And again, I did not have any comments on this section in this version. Okay. I'm hearing nothing. Down to the end here. And we will go on to, sorry for the scrolling, facilities and equipment. Questions 59 through 68. Task force members' comments. Okay. Moving on to operations, questions 69 through 82. You'll notice that the underlined sections were on certain questions were put in place because as far as the 911 system is concerned, our office can provide mission critical with that information. So this is intended to direct the respondents to give their responses based only on what happens on the dispatch side of the house. So with that in mind, let us know if you have any comments on questions 69 through 82. All righty. Okay, so then on to personnel and staffing. So this is questions 83 through 109. Task force members. Okay, I'm seeing no hands. Onto section, the section on calls and incident data. You see another notation about 911 system information can be provided by our office. So this is directed just to the dispatch function. So this is questions 110 through 121. Comments, questions? Excellent. On now to governance, leadership, and planning, which this section, as I recall, was expanded quite a bit from the original. So this is questions 122 to 130. Any comments here? All right, budget and finance is questions 131 to 135. Okay. And the last question is the data request checklist. So it's question 136 and instructs the respondents to upload any of the documents that are listed there if they're available. Comments on that part? Okay. One more opportunity for task force members on any question, any part of the survey that you have questions or concerns about. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see you better. All right. It seems to me that we had the one comment from Ron about, the getting the town information with the fire and EMS responders that I think is a pretty easy lift to incorporate that. Am I speaking out of turn here, Rance?
No, that'd be, I can do that really quick.
Okay. I would recommend then that if the task force is ready, that we have a vote to approve this survey, keeping in mind there'll be that one change. Do we want to discuss this more? Is there such a motion, or what do we think?
I'll make a motion to accept the survey with the one modification as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ron. Okay, any further discussion? All right, all in favor of accepting the survey as noted with that one correction, please raise your hand or indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I see. Thank you, Ron. I see Jim, Michael. My hand is up. Jen, I didn't see yours or Mike Dunges.
You can't see mine because my cursor focus is eluding me, but
Okay.
I
Thank
got
you.
it back.
So that is 4. Mike Dunges? He may have had to step away. However, the motion has been approved. So the survey is approved with the change that we've discussed. So next steps on this, there will be an introductory email that goes out from most likely from Jen Morrison to the stakeholder list, so that this doesn't hit their desks kind of unexpectedly. And then that will be followed, I think, Rance, we discussed within a day or two by the survey itself. And Rance, why don't you kind of wrap this up and talk
Sure.
about kind of the support mechanisms that you've put in place too for the
Right.
folks once they get this.
Yeah, as you, Barbara already hit part of it. We want to make sure that, first of all, it doesn't look like spam or some kind of weird thing coming to these agencies. So Jennifer is going to put out something about the Commissioner Morrison to give them basically a preemption email saying, hey, this information is coming from this. It'll likely come from my email. I'll be sending out to the agencies, and of course, the link to the questionnaire itself will be attached to that. Then I'll have an additional email with some additional instructions on what's going to happen, or what kind of time frame we're looking at. We are going to give them we're going to give them as much time as possible. Basically, when we decide right after Jennifer sends her email out, and then we send it out right behind that, we will give them plenty of time in order to be able to review that. As you know, I think we were even though it actually shortened up, we're still at 137 questions. So that's a lot of information to review. They do have to gather that information, and because there's a lot of it, they may or may not have that information, or they have to go do some research to pull it together. So it's going to take a little while. However, internally, what we will do on the MCP side of it, we'll put it out there, and it will give them approximately a week on that. And then we will have what we call data review collection calls or meetings, just some virtual events that we'll set up that will be sent out to the agencies. They can sign up for a particular time frame that if they have questions about the questions, then we'll be on the call with them, and they can ask clarifying, because who knows, I know we all have went through these questions several times, but someone else will probably have another question or won't understand what we're asking for. So those will be available. That's the reason we're going to send it out, give them about a week to kind of start to review and look through the questions. Maybe they have some clarifying questions. We'll have the data review call, and then we'll give them some additional time past that to make sure to give them enough time to put all that information together. Which at this point, if I'm estimating, it's going to push us through pretty much to the end of June, giving them the amount of time they need in order to gather this information together. Again, this is a big, long slog of information that we're asking for. So we do have to give them enough time, and we want to make sure that they understand that it's very important. And of course, we're going to shoot for 100% participation, but as we all know, we'll see what we get when we get done at the end.
Yeah. I did have one other note I just found here. On the intro section, Rance, you talk about it might be a good idea to review all of the questions in advance. So I think it's important that we include the PDF version, because I noticed when you go to the online version, you can't advance through all the questions, or I couldn't anyway, unless you've answered the questions on that page.
Actually, clarification, Barbara. Yes, on that. So yes, we are going to include the PDF anyway, because I know it would be easier for a lot of people sometimes. I'm that way. I'm still a little old school. I'd like to print it off, and I'd like to be able to go through it and read it, and that's fine. We're going to give them that opportunity. So they'll have the PDF, so they can print that off, or they can just open the PDF and go through that. That will be there as well. The only questions, Barbara, on that, to that point, the first 5 questions are required, which the first 5 questions are just name, contact number, phone number, and an email. I mean, if we don't get anything else, if we get the first 5 questions, at least we know who we can contact back in order to get the information. So yes, if you just entered some erroneous information, you could get past the first 5 questions, and then you could still filter through the rest of them to get information.
Okay, well, maybe just add a note about that, that you'd be able to view all of the questions once you fill out that required info. That would do the trick, I think.
Okay, there is an asterisk. I don't know if you looked at the link. There's an asterisk that says if it's required. There's an asterisk beside it, so they should be able to see that and see. Oh, okay, I've got to answer these before I can move on. But yes, we're including the PDF because for that reference material.
Okay. Excellent. Rick, I just want to check in with you, make sure you don't have any comments on the survey. And I see the message from Jen that she's jumping off now. Thanks. Go ahead, Rick.
No, I think we've done a really excellent job of reviewing the survey, every question multiple times, and I think we have a hopefully we don't tire out those who are responding, but yeah, I think it's ideal right now. The information that we're going to gather will be very essential to the program's success.
Okay, excellent. Good. I guess we're good to go then, Rance. So we'll watch for that revised question. And if there's nothing else on this agenda item, we will move on to new business. Do task force members have any new business for today? Okay, hearing none. We will go set the next meeting date has actually already been set for June 5th, 2024. If there happens to be a need, which I don't foresee, we can always schedule a special meeting in between. So that would bring us to a motion to adjourn, if there is such a thing.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Jim. I think it was. And all in favor of adjourning, please raise your hand or indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Ron. I see hands from Michael, Jim, myself. So the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much. And we will talk to you in a couple weeks.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good one.
Have a great day.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye-bye. Thanks.